Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're unpacking a classic, super powerful narrative straight from the highways of India. This is a story that literally has all the ingredients of a blockbuster thriller. We're talking high-stakes business rivalry, midnight sabotage, unexpected saviors, and ultimately some seriously poetic justice. But at its absolute core, it's really a story about the raw power of integrity.
So think about this for a second. In today's world of flashy pretense, where corners are constantly being cut and shiny appearances often mask a pretty rotten reality, can pure honesty and hard work actually bring you success? It's a question we've all asked ourselves, right? Especially when we see dishonest people seemingly getting ahead. Keep this question bouncing around in the back of your mind as we walk through the events of our story today.
Setting the stage, we start with Section 1, Tale of Two Dhabas. Now, what's really interesting about this setup is how perfectly it defines our core conflict. Picture this. It's 6 p.m. on a totally chaotic, bustling highway. Cars are just zooming past, and right next to each other, you have two completely different worlds. On one hand, you have Shambhu's Dhaba. Now, to be honest, it's barely even a structure. It's just a torn tarpaulin roof held up by 4 flimsy bamboo poles. Shambhu, who looks exhausted and is wearing soiled clothes, is cooking this traditional country chicken in a giant earthen pot right over a wood fire. And man, the air is just thick with that incredible, unmistakable aroma of fresh, hand-ground spices. His wife Kasturi is sweating right there by the fire, making fresh tandoori rotis. But here's the kicker. Despite this pure, mouth-watering food, the place is totally empty. Literally only one truck driver stopped the entire day, and Shambhu is absolutely drowning in debt to a local moneylender. Now pivot and look just 50 feet away. You've got Champak Lal's royal Punjabi Dhaba. It is glowing with obnoxious neon lights, absolutely packed with luxury cars, and features plush sofas. But the dark secret behind all those bright lights? Champak Lal is selling week-old, completely stale meat masked with industrial chemical colors. And yet, the crowds are just flocking to him. And Champak Lal isn't just your run-of-the-mill, dishonest businessman. The guy is unbelievably arrogant. Standing outside his luxurious restaurant, he looks over at Shambhu's humble setup with pure disgust. And he actually yells this to his manager. "Is that roadside beggar still cooking? Throw that trash can out of here tomorrow. It's ruining the beauty of my dhaba." He literally wants Shambhu's livelihood torn down by the next day just because the wood smoke is bothering his quote-unquote royal customers. Shambhu actually overhears this, and his heart just breaks. He tells Kasturi that if they can't manage to pay their debt by tomorrow, Champak Lal is absolutely going to make sure they are thrown out onto the street.
Which brings us to Section 2, an unexpected guest. So the sun finally sets, and by 9 p.m., the highway goes completely dark and eerily silent. The air turns cold. Shambhu is just waiting there in absolute despair, knowing his business is about to end. But then, as you can see on the timeline we've laid out, the narrative takes a sudden, really sharp turn. Out of the darkness, right around 9 p.m., there is a massive explosion. A speeding luxury car's tire violently bursts on the highway, and the vehicle skids to a screeching halt directly in front of Shambhu's humble little stall. A middle-aged man named Akhilesh literally stumbles out of the car, clutching his stomach. He is completely exhausted. His blood pressure and blood sugar have absolutely plummeted. He hasn't eaten a single thing all day, he's incredibly dizzy, and he desperately needs food and water right that second. He is so weak he can't even walk the 50 feet over to Champak Lal's giant, glowing restaurant. He's entirely at Shambhu's mercy.
Well, Shambhu and Kasturi immediately spring into action. They obviously don't have any fancy porcelain plates, but what they do have is absolute purity. Kasturi rushes over and brings him freezing cold, pure water straight from an earthen pitcher. Then they lay out a perfectly clean banana leaf on a simple wooden cot. And on it, they serve him piping hot tandoori rotis, a steaming bowl of that slow-cooked country chicken gravy, a little mutton fry, some raw onions, and a squeeze of fresh lemon. When Akhilesh takes that very first bite, his eyes just widen. He is genuinely moved to tears. He realizes instantly that there are 0 chemicals here, just real, authentic spices that taste exactly like a mother's home cooking back in a village. Akhilesh absolutely devours the meal, finishing every last bite with immense satisfaction. He turns to Shambhu and tells him that he didn't just fill his stomach, he quite literally saved his life. And then he delivers this incredible line, calling the humble tarpaulin tent a temple of Annapurna, the goddess of nourishment. Akhilesh recognizes right then and there that true quality doesn't need fancy neon lights to be spectacular. Get this,
The bill for that incredibly simple meal was barely 200 rupees, but Akhilesh pulls out his wallet and hands Shambhu a crisp 2,000 rupee note. Shambhu, being the honest guy he is, tries to refuse it, but Akhilesh insists it's a well-deserved reward for his sheer skill. But actually, he gives him something far, far more valuable than cash. Akhilesh reveals that he is actually a major wholesale merchant of high-quality meat and spices in the nearby city. He hands Shambhu his business card and tells him to come directly to his factory the next day. He promises to supply Shambhu with the absolute best quality ingredients at half the wholesale price, ensuring that Shambhu's incredible, authentic cooking can finally reach hundreds of people.
Let's move along to Section 3, Jealousy and Destruction. Let's see how this builds, because this is where the entire dynamic on the highway completely flips. Just 2 weeks later, the situation is totally unrecognizable. By using Akhilesh's premium ingredients, Shambhu's cooking has basically become legendary overnight. There are now 10 to 15 massive transport trucks lined up outside his humble stall at any given time. The drivers are happily eating, and they're all noting how Champak Lal's so-called butter chicken used to make their stomachs rot, while Shambhu's pure food literally brings life back to their exhausted bodies. Meanwhile, Champak Lal is staring out the giant glass window of his expensive, air-conditioned restaurant, and it is completely, utterly empty. Furious, he throws his glass to the floor and summons his local goons, Bhairav and Kalia. He gives them a clear order: completely destroy Shambhu's livelihood by morning. Then, suddenly, at 1 a.m., while Shambhu and Kasturi are fast asleep after a grueling day of grinding spices, the goons attack. They swarm in with heavy wooden sticks. They mercilessly smash the bamboo poles holding up the roof. And tragically, they violently kick over the large earthen pots of meat that were carefully prepared for the next day. All that thick, beautiful red gravy just mixes right into the mud. They kick Shambhu to the ground and threaten to break his legs if he ever dares to light his stove again. Shambhu is utterly broken. He just sits there in the mud crying, saying they can't possibly fight a rich, powerful man. But miraculously, by 8 a.m., they are awake and furiously rebuilding, just as highway sirens begin to wail loudly in the distance. So how on earth did they find the strength to rebuild by 8 a.m.? Well, it's all because of Kasturi. While Shambhu wept in the mud, she wiped away his tears, grabbed him by the shoulder, and delivered this incredibly powerful, defining reminder. They broke our earthen pots, not our skills. They knocked down our stove, not our courage. We will not leave. She reminded him of Akhilesh's unwavering belief in their food. It was her absolute refusal to be bullied by corruption that got that stove rebuilt before sunrise. And that leads us directly into Section 4, Truth Wins. Remember those wailing sirens we just mentioned? This brings us to the very real consequences of Champak Lal's extreme greed. So the crucial point is what those sirens were actually rushing toward. Several health department officials and police vehicles slam their brakes right in front of the Royal Punjabi Dhaba. They demand to search the kitchen based on some very solid evidence. When the food inspectors crack open those fancy commercial refrigerators, a genuinely horrifying stench fills the room. The violations they uncover are absolutely stomach-turning. They find week-old, completely rotten chicken. They find huge sacks of spices that have been chewed through by rats. And they find giant containers of cheap, industrial, cancer-causing food colors that were being used to mask the rotten food to make it look fresh. The officers are just utterly disgusted by the massive gap between the shiny 5-star facade outside and the toxic decay hiding inside. And the reason for this sudden, massive raid comes down to one glaring number: 15. 15 passengers who had eaten Champak Lal's toxic chicken biryani the night before had fallen victim to horrific food poisoning, and they were currently fighting for their lives in the local hospital. Now, just as the police are dragging a trembling, pleading Champak Lal out in handcuffs, a very familiar car pulls up. Yep, it's Akhilesh. He steps out and reveals to the officers that he is actually the one who filed the complaint. Why? Because those 15 hospitalized people were his own meat factory workers. Then Akhilesh looks across the street and sees Shambhu all bruised up and standing in the total ruins of his sabotage dhaba. Akhilesh is absolutely furious. He turns to the police inspector and tells him to add attempted murder, assault, and property destruction to Champak Lal's rap sheet, demanding that the corrupt owner not see bail for at least 10 years. Champak Lal's business is permanently sealed. It seems his wealthy customers will have to wait, as Champak Lal is about to receive some truly royal treatment inside a tiny jail cell. Finally, we reach Section 5, the true reward.
We've seen the epic downfall of deceit, so let's look at the final outcome. Fast forward 6 months, and the highway landscape has completely transformed once again. On one side, Champak Lal's once glowing royal Punjabi Dhaba is literally an abandoned ruin. Wild grass has completely overgrown the property, and the official police seal is peeling off the locked front doors. But on the other side, right where Shambhu's torn tarpaulin once stood, there is now this massive, beautiful, totally clean concrete building, and it has a bright new sign, Garib Ka Highway Dhaba. It turns out Akhilesh had helped Shambhu secure a solid bank loan to build it. Inside, there are clean tables, nice chairs, the whole shebang. But honestly, the most important detail? Even in this grand new building, Shambhu is still back there cooking his pure, incredible food over those traditional large earthen stoves. Akhilesh is sitting inside, happily enjoying a meal, noting that while the building definitely got bigger, the magical purity of the food never changed a bit. As they all sit together and reflect on their crazy journey, from a muddy, sabotaged roadside tent to a thriving, permanent restaurant, Kasturi really captures the entire essence of their survival with this one final realization. Show-off and deceit only last for a few days, but the taste of hard work and honesty stays with you for a lifetime.
And this brilliantly illustrates our final takeaway from today's explainer: the flash of pretense or the taste of honesty. Think about it. When the midnight goons arrive, or the health inspectors finally knock, or the real heavy storms of life hit, which foundation will you actually be standing on? A glowing neon sign masking a rotten core, or a humble earthen pot filled with absolute truth? Thank you so much for walking through this incredible story with me today, and definitely keep that question with you as you navigate your own journey. Catch you next time.